Hi, everyone. Just waiting for someone from IT Academy to come and get us started. I think she's having some issues logging in. So we'll give her a minute, and if not, we'll get started.
Apologies. I'm doing my best to try to get Deirdre in here.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on. I told her I had to get like my Gmail to let me in and be the host. It was very strange.
Yeah, I'm troubleshooting on the side.
Okay. Do you want us to wait or should we get started?
Um, let's see. You can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Someone else? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us or just joining me for today's session. And it's going to be video and audio over IP for live production at Harvard Athletics. My name is Imri Halevi. I'm the Senior Associate Director of Athletics for Content and Strategic Communications at Harvard. I will share my screen in a moment. I have a presentation. It's a combination of some written slides and some videos, lots of photos, some case studies. I will absolutely leave time at the end for questions, but I will also do my best to monitor the chat. So if you have any questions throughout, please feel free to enter them in the chat. And it's one of those, if you have the question, it's likely that other people have the same question, and it's best to just address it as we're speaking. So before we get started, any preliminary questions? Okay, excellent, riveting. I will share my screen, as they say. Okay, I think I'm sharing my screen. Like I can nod from Annie. There we go. Thank you, Annie. Okay, so as I said, video and audio over IP for live production and my name. So next slide. First video, this is a couple of minutes, and it's just like a sizzle reel of what we do, what we're talking about, and then I'll explain it. If you don't hear audio, please signal with your hands and I'll stop it and try again. Here we go.
4, 3, 2, 1.
We welcome you to Cambridge, Massachusetts for Ivy League women's basketball on ESPN. This afternoon, it's the matchup we've all been waiting for.
The course is firm. It's in great shape. You know, this is one of the best courses that you can have to have this type of competition.
It's nine-hitter Jack Rickheim.
He's been retired.
One more time in the pool tonight. 400-yard relay.
From the Bright Landry Hockey Center in Cambridge, we welcome you to rivalry night across college hockey. On the jump with Parker Hill.
Lightly contested one here in your final home game. What can you guys do in the second and third period? Start generating some ball.
Lost in the first year.
Scott's two sisters are currently skiing World Cups for the U.S. ski team, so they're watching quite the scene.
The 10 squad that was the winner of the Josh Thompson Invite.
From Jordan Field on the campus of Harvard University, this is the Ivy League on ESPN. Harvard has one of their own. Louis Lesmond had a career-high 17, knocked down 5 threes the first time these two teams met.
So if I'm Dartmouth, I can just keep an eye on the 10 they can pass. I'd probably keep going for much longer now on court.
Took the lead near the start of the second lap and then held it for laps 2, 3, and 4. But a long gap to make up for Piper with Prince to try to catch Corinne defend.
Some of these squads, as they come down the stretch, a chance for redemption for Harvard. Next weekend, they'll take on Cornell and Columbia.
The first, still no outs.
Maya Douglas went up to bat with a plan. She moved up in the box.
Was turning to the wall. Harvard will win the event 250-73. It is just shy of the 8 cut.
Point, who would be in front right now? You're seeing Harvard, Penn, Columbia, Princeton, all pretty close there in that 2nd through 4th place spot.
Ready to take 2.
Two competitors who registered close in the top 100, but sometimes these events they last. And there are years where you have nationally ranked throwers.
That felt really great.
Have a 500 above season. The same for Brown entering this match. Short side, powered in, and we are tied at 2.
Appreciate you all joining us tonight on this historic broadcast of the Constellation game for the first time. An outstanding job by our entire crew here at this Harvard video production.
Stayed so long from Levitas Pavilion. The final score, Harvard 74, Penn 70. This has been a production of Ivy League basketball on ESPN.
So that was, there we go. So that was highlights from our 2023-2024 production season. We'll talk about everything, very, very IP heavy. But this is the plan for the next, 40 minutes. Talk about why we use AV over IP, the types of uses, contribution and transmission, types of technologies we use, the results, and then some questions. So here we go. There we go. So purpose. Our mission, the mission of Harvard Athletics Multimedia Team, is to preserve our history and tell our story. Tell our story pretty easy. We have amazing student athletes, coaches, teams, and we want to tell their story. We want to make sure people know what they're about and what makes them amazing and what makes them interesting people who are curious about the world. Preserve our history. We're at Harvard. We don't know when the next president, Supreme Court justice, CEO, amazing athlete, doctor, whatever is going to come from our ranks. And so we want to make sure that we show everything that happens here and preserve it forever. Broadcast scope, and we produce and broadcast all home contests for all our teams. I say 42 because we have 42 teams. Unfortunately, our golf teams don't have a home course, so we have yet to do golf. But everything else, that's about 325 broadcasts a year. Duration is 2 to 3 hours for something like hockey, basketball, to full day for things like sailing, skiing, track and field. And why do we use IP? And our contests happen some on the Harvard campus, some in the Boston area, some in New England, some very, very far away. And so this makes it much simpler for us. And plus we have 2 centralized control rooms, and we'll talk about those in a moment. And to get all the feeds, all the production done in those 2 control rooms, we need to use IP. Okay, 2 control rooms. So again, what we do is broadcasting. If you turn on ESPN, turn on NESN, turn on any sports on TV, you see a live sports broadcast, you see live cameras, you hear commentators talking, you see graphics on the screen. That's what we do. That's how we tell the story of our competitions. To do that, we have control rooms where we have lots of equipment that helps us tell these stories. Some switchers that allow us to switch between different sources, to replay machines that allow us to rewind things, to graphics, lots of other things. So this is one of our control rooms. This one happens to be at Levitas Pavilion where we play basketball. And then the other one, there we go. This one happens to be at the hockey facility. And I emphasize happen to because it doesn't matter where they are. It used to. the hockey control room used to be for hockey and the basketball control room used to be for basketball back before IP, because we literally had to run cables, but now we don't have to. And so you can kind of tell here in the back, they're doing a softball show here. You can tell they're doing a lacrosse game at the same time as they're doing a sailing broadcast. And there's a lot going on, and these two control rooms allow us to do that. Before IP, so this was one of our racks. It's wonderful, I know, but it's a lot of cables. And so we relied on what's called baseband video and audio, which is running video and audio mostly over copper cabling. Had long cable runs. We had expensive cables, difficult configurations, limited by geography, obviously. I just mentioned sailing. Well, we would not have run cables all the way to the river. Impractical expansions, if we wanted to go beyond, we were basically very, very limited to where we were. We would produce football, hockey, basketball, soccer, field hockey, things that are right here that we could run cables to. After IP, look at that. And I'm taking credit for this, but obviously these are the amazing people at Spectrum who run all our cables, and Harvard IT who manages our IDFs and MDFs. But we rely on Hewitt's amazing network to run signals everywhere, easy graphic-based configuration tools, cheaper, more modern equipment. Distance is not a factor. We've produced things from all over the country, and that really doesn't matter. We often expand into new facilities, also not really a factor or anything we really have to worry about. So this is our world now. I'm going to pause here. I know some people have joined us since then. Just going to remind you that if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I will absolutely leave time at the end for questions. Okay, type of uses. So we use video and audio over IP for two things: contribution and distribution. And to briefly explain those, contribution is all the sources of content that come into our control room. So for us, it's cameras, microphones, headsets, things like that. And then distribution is the result. We produce everything in our control rooms and then distribute it. For us, that means distributing it to ESPN for streaming, to NESN for broadcast on TV. International viewers can't go to ESPN Plus or NESN, so we have a special platform for them. But we contribute and then distribute, again, all over IP. Parentheses here are the technologies we use, but we'll, the next few slides are going to explain those. Next two slides. Okay, so our main technology is called NDI. I copy-pasted the definition from their website, so here we are. But NDI is a technology that allows transmission of video and audio back and forth with very low latency in real time over IP. There are many variants of NDI. There is the full NDI, which is very common, which is uncompressed. So the bandwidth needed per signal is not insignificant, and the latency is pretty good. And then NDI HX, which is the compressed version, which you can choose the bandwidth you're using, so it's much easier on the network, but the latency suffers because of that. NDI is free for end users. If you are, JVC here, the camera, and you're incorporating NDI into your equipment, that costs money. But that's not really my concern. It's free for us, which is great. So we use NDI extensively, either for equipment that has NDI built in, or to convert things. If we have existing equipment that has HDMI or SDI, which is the professional variant of HDMI, to get video and audio somewhere, I can use very small, very easy, very cheap converters to convert that to NDI, connect it to our Hewitt network, and off we go. NDI is also VLAN agnostic to a point, so I can really be anywhere, public internet even. There are obviously bandwidth limitations to that, and you have to think about it a little bit, but I can be anywhere, anything, and as long as I have two public IPs or port forwarding, I can do that. Also, I'm trying to balance the technical jargon with that because I don't know who's here, but if you need more technical, put in the chat. If you need less technical, you can leave the meeting and then I'll know I'm being too technical and I will scale it back. Oops, skip. Oh, no, okay, NDI. So here's an example of something. This is our pool right now. We're having some chlorine issues, so it's a little bit foggy. But this is from this morning. I'm using software called NDI Video Monitor, and it's showing me all the NDI sources on our network. Each of these is a device you can see listed, and each of these devices could have multiple channels. It could be sending different things. And so you can look at, like, field hockey has a couple of things there. There are cameras at field hockey that are NDI, and they're always on. Everything is always on, but they're not actively sending a signal. It's not like a security camera that's constantly transmitting or recording. They're just there, and using multicast and MDNS, they're saying, hey, I'm here, here I am. And so they are appearing on my list. But if I click on one of them, then it starts a unicast transmission, sending me the video signal that I asked for. And so I'm just showing here the pool as an example, but this is how we look at NDI sources. We can see them all on the list, and then we can look at them. We can record them by choosing them from this list. I'm happy to do a demo later. As you can see, we have lots of NDI sources. The second biggest technology is Dante. Again, stole from their website, but Dante it does a lot of things, but basically most people use it to transmit audio back and forth over network. It is very different than NDI. It is incredibly VLAN specific unless you work a lot to make it not. It's very low latency, but it's very, very sensitive to network interference. NDI will just work regardless. Dante, if there's just a little bit too much going on the switch, it will just cut out and say, well, too much for me. And so we've had to work a lot with our Hewitt friends and networking friends to make sure that Dante works. We use Dante to get audio signals back and forth. If we have commentators calling a broadcast with headsets, they have one of these stations that are displayed here, and that's over Dante. Some other things that we do, we use bonded cellular solutions a lot. So this backpack here in the corner is by a company called LiveView. And what they do is they take a video signal. I can plug in HDMI or SDI. They have 2, 4, 6, or 8 cellular antennas inside, split between different networks. So this pack has 2 AT&T, 2 Verizon, and 2 T-Mobile SIMs inside with antennas. Splits up my video signal, sends it across all these different cell networks, reconvenes back in our control room where we have a LiveView receiver, converts back to SDI and HDMI. And so if I'm not on the Harvard network, or I don't have a strong hardwired internet connection, I can use these LiveView packs, or there are some other companies that do these with bonded cellular solution. The latency is significant. It's not nothing because it travels, the public network and needs to reconvene at the end, and there's some forward error correction going on. So the latency is typically between 1 second and 5 seconds. You can choose what you want it to be. The longer it is, the safer it is. But we use this, and we'll give some examples later. We use communications methods. This is a technology by a company called Clearcom, called LQ. We use Starlink, which is Wi-Fi over satellites. I'll talk about that in a case study in a little bit. And then RTSP, which is another IP transmission. We use that a little bit here and there. So just like I showed you what NDI looks like on the network, which is this nice visual guide of all the sources, Dante looks completely different. This is what's called Dante Controller. And again, it's just a screenshot from my computer. And this is a grid of all the transmitters and all the receivers on our network. And if I click on each one, it shows me the different channels inside, and I can route audio. When we started doing Dante, this was scary. It's still, is a little scary. There's just a lot here, but it's incredibly powerful because historically what we've needed to do is literally patch audio cables from place to place. If we had to change audio sources, if we were going from one facility to the other, constantly repatch things, this takes care of all of that. We just have lots of transmitters and receivers on the network. We can just go in and route them to each other, say this transmitter goes to this receiver. Super easy, super powerful. A very simple chart of what a production looks like. As you understand, we have some cameras here at the field at the top left. On the bottom, we have some commentators and a microphone all going to some Dante boxes or Dante converters. And then they go to a nice Hewitt switch. And then our control room somewhere else on campus has the Hewitt switch and has Dante and NDI going out to our switcher, our replay, broadcast graphics, transmission. Obviously, in reality, it's a lot more complex, but that's the gist of it. Next slide. There we go. So this is our control room again, and this is a little bit to explain How do you handle sync between NDI and Dante? A very, very good question. So a question in the chat from Dimitri. How do you handle sync between NDI and Dante? We have tools in our switcher, so you can see the front of the graphic here is our video switcher. It allows us to control delay. So I can delay video and or delay audio sources to match with each other. Typically on campus, hardwired, full NDI, the sync between that and Dante is perfect. I really don't have to worry about it. When I do worry about it is when I have bonded cellular, where the latency could be up to a second, then I delay all the Dante sources to match, which again is software-based and allows us to do that. Thank you for the question. So just to show a little bit of responsibilities and what's going on and how everything works, and to take a break from the technical discussions. So our basketball control room, and we actually had a swim meet at the same time, which was a blast. So our basketball technical director is sitting in the middle. They're operating our video switcher, then basketball director, graphics operator, replay, and then in the back, some other basketball players and some swimming swimming operators. The point here is obviously to show that the control room is super flexible and that it can handle a lot of different things. But are you using a question in the chat? Are you using NDI for screens in the venue? Is there a latency issue in that case? No, so NDI and IMAG, which is image magnification. So if you have like a projector or video board, is a common discussion in the industry. If you're using full NDI, uncompressed and wired internet, then yeah, we use it. I mean, to answer your question, yes, we use NDI for in-venue screens. And again, the delay is not a big deal. If I were using NDI HX compressed, or if I'm using something on Wi-Fi, I would not trust it. I would have to, especially if I needed lip sync, I would want to use baseband or not IP or something else on IP to avoid the sync issues. Other control room at the same time, we had a hockey game. This is this crazy day. Hockey game, and we had wrestling at the same time. So this was 4 events. We had hockey, basketball, swimming, and wrestling, just to show you all the different people sitting down, what they're doing, how they're doing it. Just again, a sense of where we are and what we're actually doing with things. Okay. So, SWOT analysis for AV over IP. Why is it good? Why is it not? Strengths, weaknesses, etc. So strength, we talked about before. No need for expensive cabling. Endpoints are not resolution or framework specific, which is great for us as we switch from 720p to 1080 to 4K. You know, it's more bandwidth, but we don't have to do anything about it. We just have to make sure that our friends at Hewitt support the bandwidth. But if you're using baseband, then equipment just doesn't support 4K. Like if you take a 4K signal connected to a 720 TV, nothing's going to happen. It doesn't even realize that it's there. IP doesn't have that issue. Not location specific, remote monitoring, gear costs are good. And weaknesses, bandwidth, obviously. Up until recently, all our switches here on the athletic side were old Cisco switches with 1 gig uplink from each switch, which was a big problem because we hit that 1 gig constantly. And so many of our switches are now nice new Aruba, 2 times 10 gig. And over the summer, we're upgrading everything to Aruba 2 times 25 gig. So we will be doing much, much better. But that's the consideration. You know, bandwidth is always something you want to think about, especially per switch port. That's still limited to 1 gig. Network health dependent. Opportunities. We always do fun new things, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Technology evolution doesn't require gear upgrades necessarily. Threats, technical problems, not, you know, we used to, when a technical problem happened, pull a cable, replace the cable, and move on. But now we rely on other people, right? We rely on IT technicians and engineers, and that's a threat. I mean, it's if they're not there, if we don't know what to do, if the network is down, those are really big problems for us. And while we're not going to talk about it in this presentation, there's a lot of money involved. And we get a lot of money from ESPN to broadcast our games. There's a rights fee there. A lot of people rely on what we do. They pay a subscription fee to ESPN to watch our broadcasts. And if we're down, that's a problem. So threats are, you know, downtime. Okay, so we're going to pause with the technical stuff and do some case studies and talk about how we use all of this and what it has allowed us to do. Again, feel free to ask any questions. Happy to answer. Case study 1. alpine skiing. So this was a few years ago, and ski coach came into my office, sat down and said, so let's talk skiing. We'd like to broadcast it. And I said, well, that's nice, but where do you ski? Well, he said, okay, well, alpine that year was in Waterville Valley. So that's like central New Hampshire, which turned out to be by far the easiest place. And Nordic skiing, so alpine is downhill skiing, and Nordic, which we'll talk about in a moment, is cross-country skiing. That was in Craftsbury, Vermont. And for people who are not aware where Craftsbury is, the closest thing is Canada. And there's no cell reception. There's nothing there. So that took some thought. But let's focus on alpine. So what did we do? To broadcast skiing, we set up a camera at the start line mountain, mid-course camera, finish line camera, and then a camera for interviews at the end. We set up some microphones throughout, and we had a sideline reporter on site to ask questions, and then we had commentators back on campus calling the whole race. Connectivity, our cameras out there had bonded cellular live view packs, and I wrote priority here because we worked with AT&T to get priority SIMs, which means that even if there were 10,000 people around us, all with AT&T phones, our transmissions would go out first, and then everyone with their phones, which was very helpful. Standard cellular for communications. People use apps on their phones to communicate. Dante audio for on-campus commentators. NDI within the control room, and then we transmit it to ESPN. Here is a nice visual representation of, this is actually the following. So this is Burke Mountain, not Waterville. And you can, I don't know, self-explanatory. I'm not going to talk through the camera locations, but you can tell where the camera locations are. Sideline reporter would stand there by the flag, and then bottom left is Boston, 190 miles away, where the control room was. Beautiful day. We have had snowstorms in the past, which was always a blast. Here is a very short clip from the broadcast.
But let's talk about, I know they ski throughout the week from time to time, obviously, but a university event hasn't happened in quite some time now for these guys.
Yeah, we're first weekend of February here, and this is the second carnival that they're taking place in. Oh, able to hang on. Noah just getting tripped up, but able to stay on line, push forward, and get right back on rhythm here into the finish.
So impressive.
So, alpine ski clip, getting graphics there and commentators talking. Again, they're watching this on a monitor back on campus. Question from John in the chat: are you utilizing PoE to power any of these endpoint devices? The answer is yes, lots, which has caused some issues because lots of PoE means lots of PoE. I mean, there's a lot of power there. But yes, many of the Dante devices are PoE and some NDI ones as well. And that has also helped us simplify things. One cable to rule them all, much easier than, hey, one for video, one for power. Question, I've seen drone footage in the montage earlier in the meeting. Was that inserted in post? Oh, no. Drone is all live, but we'll see that in a moment. Good question. I love drones. We can do a whole hour on drones. If anyone's interested, IT Academy people, take note.
But let's talk about...
Okay, second case study, which will address drone as well. Nordic skiing. Again, Craftsbury, Vermont, SIM cards did not work. There was no cell reception, zero. It was something. We had start line, a camera at the start line, a mid-course camera, finish line, and interview camera, and we had a drone. Ambient microphone, sideline reporter, same thing. There was at Craftsbury this lodge where they did have Wi-Fi, and so some of our cameras connected to the Wi-Fi there as well as the drone. But especially for the mid-course camera, that's a camera in the middle of the course, nothing there. That's where we had to get creative, and we got Starlink. So for people not familiar, Starlink is satellite-based internet. And there are, Elon Musk put satellites everywhere, and you can get a satellite dish, costs $500. I was shocked when I saw it, super cheap. It is really cool. It just operates on its own, finds the best satellite at all times. Service costs $150 a month, and you can turn it on and off as needed. And so we used it for a month, turn it off, and that's it. It was great. Here is that setup. So here is this camera in the middle of the course. And here is, it's two photos just because they're a few feet away, but here's the Starlink satellite dish. And the camera, you can see, has this little live view pack. The live view is the bonded cellular, though we did not use the bonded cellular. It also has Wi-Fi antennas. So that pack connected to the Wi-Fi generated by the Starlink satellite. And then I know there's some other gear there, but there's an example in a moment. Oh, and here's our sideline reporter, Alex, who was standing in front of a camera at the finish line interviewing athletes. But let's cut to the chase. Here is Nordic skiing.
Is key to understanding how they're gonna be able to perform today. Despite that, though, I think that these athletes have such a broad range of athletic ability and are able to perform well in such short and long races, which is admirable.
So lots of things to talk about here. Live drone. So the drone is up, in the air, and then there's a controller. The controller gets a video feed from the drone using a proprietary technology and has HDMI out, the controller. So we take HDMI out from the controller and connect it, in this case, to a live view pack. So it's like a camera. The controller is basically getting a video feed, sends it to live view, and live view connects using here Wi-Fi, and they're on campus, just bonded cellular. A question, when using drones on campus, how do you arrange permissions to shoot? We get permissions to shoot. We have licensed drone pilots, and there's an app. You go to the FAA and you request permission to shoot. And so the FAA provides permission to use the airspace. If needed, we also notify HUPD and HBAC and state police based on the situation. We have some local TV stations here on Soldiers Field Road, so we want to always coordinate because they have helicopters going up and down, so we want to coordinate that. But I don't think I have an example of this, but we use drones extensively. Skiing is a good example, but on sailing broadcasts, rowing broadcasts, which it's required, otherwise you can't really see anything, but also for fun stuff. We do it for baseball, lacrosse, we have drones, and it really helps provide that unique angle. And again, as the presentation topic is, all over IP, always over IP. Thank you for all the questions. Keep them coming. Case study fencing. So back to reality a little bit. I know how many people are planning to broadcast skiing, and if so, give me a call. Happy to help. But fencing is much simpler. So fencing, similar to volleyball and wrestling, happens at the MAC, the Malkin Athletic Center. We have 5 remote PTZ cameras. So PTZ stands for pan, tilt, and zoom. So these are robotic cameras. They're up in the ceiling. We have commentators at Lavides Pavilion for fencing, and the production is at the Bright Landry Hockey Center. We use NDI for the cameras, Dante for commentators, and SRT transmission to ESPN. I'm just going to jump 2 slides ahead. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. So this is a map to explain what I'm talking about and how everything goes. So you can tell the Bright Landry Hockey Center here in the middle. Hopefully you can see my cursor there. That's where our production is. The commentators are at Lavides. We just have 2 broadcast booths there. So you can see how there are 2 commentator stations and then the robotic camera. And then they have these giant TVs in front of them where they can watch the show. There's NDI that obviously does not actually go like that across the river, goes along the bridge and through many stops along the way. But we have these robotic cameras at the MAC with microphones. That goes on the Harvard network. Everything gets produced and then transmitted using SRT and RTMP to the cloud, as they say, which is just someone else's server. So fencing, so here's a map, or not a map, sorry. Here's some pictures of the broadcast. And this is, if you've been to the MAC, this is how they set up fencing. And here are commentators. I couldn't find a picture of fencing, so this is them calling volleyball, but same location, same setup. So 2 commentators sitting in the room with a green screen behind them. And they have these 2 75-inch monitors on the wall, and then another small one on the counter. They have a camera in front of them. We haven't talked about this, but they have a telestrator, which allows them to draw on the broadcast. And they just sit there and call it. Pros and cons, it's always best to be on site whenever we can. We have commentators on site calling the game, experiencing it live. Sometimes it's just much easier to do it here. Sometimes it's impractical. They can't be at skiing. They can't be at sailing or rowing or tennis. They can't see everything if they're just sitting in a facility. So we have 2 of these rooms, which would be amazing. Which are amazing. Would have been difficult to do without. We actually once used this room before we moved to IP, and we literally ran cables from our control room to upstairs, around corners to this room. Was awful. Now you can kind of see on the left, there is a little switch here, and we're good to go. So again, fencing. Rowing. So the Ivy League hosts their rowing championship in the Cooper River in New Jersey every year. they want to broadcast it, and so they've asked us a long time ago, 10 years ago, to help them out. We have since been doing it every year, and every year besides the Ivy League, there are other conferences rowing there, the A10, the MAC, the CAA, and the Patriot League, and so we broadcast rowing for all of them. Similar setup, start line camera, drone, finish line camera, commentators on site. The one change here is that there's a video board. So jump to a photo. Here's a camera there at rowing, but here is this giant outdoor video board that is showing the broadcast, and it's funny to think about because the race is right there and we have all our cameras there, but the cameras are then transmitted back to campus where we do the full production and then back on site for the video board. So someone asked earlier, do you worry about delays? Yeah, there is probably a 2 or 3 second delay between reality and what they see on the video board because of the trip back and forth. But we told them and they said they're okay with it because it's rowing and it's not that important that they see everything exactly when it happens. All these fans are at the finish line. They're all parents and the race starts 2 kilometers upriver. So they watch the video board and our production over IP. And then as the boats get towards the finish line, everyone turns around and just watches the boat come to the actual finish line. And here's a clip to mix up me talking photos and videos.
For URI, that leadership structure of having 5 captains, it sounds excessive in some ways, maybe to some programs to think, well, if you got 5 captains, well, why such a high percentage? Is it really a valuable?
That was a clip of rowing. There's a drone, obviously, drone following the boats, clock, score, and then our tracking map. So a question we often get, I don't see it in the chat, so I'm just going to pretend someone asked it, is, oh my goodness, what amazing technology did you have to have this dot tracking the boats? That's crazy. How do you do that? You know, if I mess with people, I say, well, we have GPS tracking dots. It's crazy, Jason Bourne stuff. But the reality is I know exactly how long this race is going to take. It's going to take 7 minutes and 30 seconds. We do it every year and it's off by like 2 seconds. And so the thing on the left is a video and it's just a dot that moves and takes 7 minutes and 30 seconds to go from start to finish. And so it looks like it's tracking the boats, but in fact, it's just playing along. Everybody goes crazy for it. It's like the simplest thing to do. And everybody thinks it's the most expensive part. So, you know, lying with IP, I guess, could be another presentation we do. And okay, I have one more case study and then I'll open it up for questions. Beanpot at the Garden. So Beanpot, the hockey Beanpot is, for people who are not sports fans, is a 4-team hockey tournament that happens every year at the Garden. It is BU, Northeastern, BC, and Harvard. And there are 4 games, 2 semifinal games for the men. We're talking about the men's. There's a women one that's handled differently. And then there's a semifinal and final. And the 2 semifinals and the final are all broadcast on NESN. And then the consolation game, which is the 2 teams that lost the semifinals, is not broadcast. It's never been broadcast. No one can watch it. It's very sad. So we have been tasked with helping them out. So we have broadcast the 3rd place game out of the Garden over the last couple of years. And all using IP extensively. We get a video board feed from the Garden. We set up our own cameras. We have phones transmitting. It's really cool. We use a variety of technologies. We use live view and we use IP pipe, which is pretty cool. So, you know, I talked about the live view pack where you can plug in video and it transmits over bonded cellular. It also allows you to extend your on-campus network. So we have a live view receiver on our campus that's obviously connected to our network. And then there's the live view packs on site. And if you turn on this feature, you can plug in things into the live view packs on site, and it's basically extending the Hewitt network over VPN, over bonded cellular to the live view pack. And so the bandwidth is very, very limited. But if I have, I know, the example here I'm giving is the PTZ camera. So I have this remote control camera. There we go. You can see on the left, there are 2 commentators in the booth at the Garden, and we have this white robotic camera in front of them, and I want to control it. I want to manually move this camera a little bit. I can do that over bonded cellular. The camera is connected to our live view pack, and it's appearing as though it's getting a Harvard IP. It's appearing as though it's on campus, which allows us to control it with a delay. Really, really cool technology. We use Zoom to move some feeds back and forth, especially things where we don't care about the quality as much. And then Dante is SRT as usual. So again, this is people in the garden. You can see our camera. And then this is our control room, ironically, at basketball, doing a professional hockey broadcast out of the garden. Everything over IP. All the cameras, all the commentators, everything, which, 5, 6, 7 years ago, before AV over IP, couldn't even have the conversation. We used to broadcast things on NESN, like 10 years ago. We'd have to rent a satellite truck literally from campus to go to space to send things to NESN, which is 2 miles down the road on Western Ave. And so we're happy to have moved on from that. 2 final slides. So this is an example. We had to do this big baseball broadcast a couple of years ago that involved basically all IP technologies that exist. So this is a quick map of that. It's a combination of point-to-point wireless SDI and wireless communications, a drone flying over, commentators on site, remote controlled cameras, all to our control room through the cloud and to Leviti. It was a lot. So that's something that I always like to show. It shows all the very different technologies and all working together just to broadcast baseball, importantly because our baseball field doesn't have internet. It's just a place in the ground. We recently got power, which was very exciting. So that's where we are. Final slide. So some facts and figures. Sports supported, so we talked about how we do 40 out of 42. Number of broadcasts a year, about 325. Where do we distribute to? ESPN, NESN. We also stream sometimes to social media. We have this Sunday a tennis match that we're broadcasting on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Number of NDI sources, we have generally about 75. Number of Dante sources, about 35. Production VLAN, so we have one primary VLAN we use that has one subnet in it, and then we have a secondary one for overflow on our nice Hewitt network. Number of total managed devices, about 385. There's lots of devices we use on our network that's not NDI or Dante. They just are IP-based devices. And the number of venues that we've regularly produced from, about 20, and then, anywhere. And question, when did you do the conversion to NDI? The moment NDI came out. I can look it up. I don't remember when they released NDI. It was developed by a company called Newtek. I want to say around 2013, 14, 15, 16, I don't know, something like that. But the moment they came out with it, we jumped on the wagon. Since then, Newtek has been bought out by another company called VizRT, and NDI was spun off to be its own company. What CDN distribution services are you all using for your social platforms? We don't. So X, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok have their own CDNs. They provide, so we stream using RTMP. They provide RTMP URLs, push points, and we send to them. Same with ESPN. They use their own CDN. So we don't really have our own CDNs. No one can connect to us. We distribute to, NOCs at other places, and they take care of wide distribution. Okay, more questions. Are you using QoS to prioritize network traffic? How did you set up Dante traffic separate VLAN from the video traffic? Excellent. So we don't do QoS. We've talked about it. Hewitt networking pushed back a little bit, which is fine because it really hasn't been an issue because it's a separate VLAN. We have not yet separated video. So NDI and Dante share a VLAN. Everybody says you have to separate them. They're going to cause problems. They haven't yet. And because we're on a lot of Cisco switches, we don't have ClearPath mobility yet. So all our VLANs are jack-based, and to separate them would be a huge pain for me and the networking team. So we're just cruising along. They promised me in the summer we get mobility, and then maybe we'll decide to split up into 2 different VLANs. But right now, seriously, NDI and Dante, we do these productions for linear TV, and they haven't clashed with each other at all. So those were all my slides. 2:48, perfect timing for me. I will pause here and ask if there are any questions, anything. I'm happy to go back to any slide, show examples of anything on the network right now. That's super easy. Or answer any questions. I don't mind awkwardness. I will sit here for 12 minutes. It's all on you. Ask questions. Okay, no questions. Oh, wait,
I think we've got a couple coming in.
I was going to say, I have a demo I can do. It's great, but no questions. Production crew using a mix of FTEs and contingent workers. Yes, thank you, hiring freeze. Yes, so we have FTEs. We have our multimedia team has 3.5 full-time people who do live production. And one of them is always at a broadcast, either directing or taking other roles. And then the majority of our staff, so if we go back and we have a control room, there we go. Majority of our staff are lights. So less than half time, 14 hours a week. These are students from local area colleges, as well as recent graduates. And ironically, not many Harvard students care about this. No broadcasting department, no journalism school, but kids at BU, BC, Northeastern, Emerson, they eat this up. So we get lots of, recruiting is really not an issue. We have about 100, depending on the year, 100 to 150 lights to staff all these positions. We ask that they come with the passion and hopefully some knowledge of sports, but we can teach them how to use the gear. Teaching them sports is tricky. So we hope that they know the sports, but what the buttons do is fine. Are you using any Teradek wireless in your ecosystem? Yes, I don't know if I have a picture of that, but we use Teradek Bolt, which is point-to-point wireless transmission, especially at football in the stadium. We have a wireless camera roaming around. And we've also started using equipment from a company called Haivision, which also does point-to-point wireless transmission, much cheaper than Teradek. Very, very little latency. It's really been great. What is the compression rate of the NDI signal? So, the theory is, where are we? NDI. I had a thing, there we go. So full NDI uncompressed, 120 to 180 megs based on what I want to give it. And then compression, again, depends on how much I want to give it. I can compress it a lot, and then you can see that it's compressed. But it really depends on your bandwidth and how much latency you're willing to take. It's also the quality of the equipment, right? Some equipment does really good job with compression and some doesn't. You can still send photos, but I'm going to try to figure out how to end the slideshow. And there we go. Just be seeing my desktop now, right? Hopefully. Yes, good. I'm going to launch NDI Monitor. So I'm on a Mac, but this works on a PC as well. And so this is NDI Monitor. It's a free app and has all our NDI sources on the network right now. Here they're not grouped. The one I showed you before, they were grouped. And so I can see anything. Again, they're not transmitting right now. It's just MDNS multicast, but I can say, let's look at Jordan Field. It's a live feed from Jordan Field right now. And this is an actual robotic camera. You can see the cars and I can control it. And you can see the latency or lack thereof in my control at the very least. I mean, there might be some latency in the transmission. We'd never know that. But the power and the flexibility is just crazy. I mean, Uhiri, go. We set up recently a camera at the Weld Boathouse. Thank you, Spectrum, for helping us. Here it is. This one's not robotic. It's just POV. Is there frame rate limitations? Not really. I mean, our productions are 720p 5994, so 60 frames per second. Have we tried 120 frames per second? We have. Has it been great? It has not. But there's no limitation. Like the technology doesn't really limit anything. What else? I showed the pool before, but there are all these cameras everywhere on our campus that really make it great. This one I think has audio. That they have the screen down, but this is valuable. And I'll launch Dante as well just to show what it's like. It's very powerful. What is the threshold for simultaneous live streams and productions? So it's a good question. And the question is, of course, what creates the threshold and the limit? In theory, there's no limit, right? It's how much the switches can withstand. And because we're kind of geographically distributed in terms of facilities, we have many switches. And so I can have all our teams going on at the same time, and it really wouldn't be an issue. Again, we're limited to 1 gig per switch port. And so if you try to take 10 cameras and all full NDI, put them on 1 switch ports, they will not work. But we have had 8 broadcasts, I think, simultaneous, has been our max. Hasn't really been an issue. And we're limited with space. We have 2 control rooms that can each do 2 productions at the same time, though we have some other mobile gear that can do productions as well. But yeah, no limit. The bandwidth is the only thing that's limited. This is the Dante controller. Also, free software comes with Dante, allows us to route things. So if I'm going to open up one of my Dante mixers here, you can see how it has all these different sources. Orange just means it's expecting a signal from a device that's currently turned off because we don't have any games going on right now. But you can see all these other channels coming in from transmitters and how they're routed. It's pretty cool, very easy to route signals. Are you using Logic Monitor to keep an eye on network bandwidth? I am not. I'm using my friends at Hewitt Networking to keep an eye on bandwidth. They are great. Honestly, we've kind of gotten a sense for it because early on we didn't care at all. Like, let's put everything on one switch and one port. It's going to be great. Spoiler alert, it was not great. So now we know how much bandwidth we have. We know what we can use, and it really hasn't. Last few years, bandwidth hasn't really been a problem. Again, we have to think through IP things that we don't typically have to think of. Swimming and diving and water polo are really big things for us. And at the pool, everything gets corroded all the time because of the humidity and the chlorine. And so any jacks, just normal networking jacks that are left open, nothing's plugged into them, are going after 2 years. They're too corroded. You can't use them, and they're just packet losses constantly. And so we've worked on some NEMA box implementations or just re-terminating cables every couple of years. That's been a lot of factors for us to think about. 5 minutes to go. Any other questions or anything I can show you? I did in the last slide there put my email address, which is available on the Harvard directory, and Go Crimson. If you have any other super technical questions or anything you want to talk about, or if you're thinking of implementing AV over IP, feel free to email. That's my email in the chat. Also, in my free time, which is not so much, I'm active on social media, and you can see pictures of all our streams. Okay.
Oh, Emery, I think one more question.
Typical storage destination for
typical storage destination for live stream capture.
Okay, excellent question. Thank you. We have also worked with Hewitt, as Hewitt's storage team, on coming up with a storage solution that works for us. I believe right now it's an AWS gateway with an on-prem appliance that allows us to store a lot of things and then backs up to a AWS bucket as needed. So the capture and recording live happens locally on the devices. It's not network. Like, we have a switcher, it gets all the feeds, and we record our production. When we're done, we take the full recording. We don't record live on a network drive and then copy that to our Hewitt shares and the AWS service that we have. It's great, hasn't been a problem. How do you monitor the health of the devices and keep them up to date? Well, they tell me if they're not healthy, the devices, because they stopped working. But we also have a regular schedule for maintenance and replacement. So we know the expected lifespan of every piece of device, every piece of equipment. And then once we hit that date, we are very careful, and we either replace it, or if it's tight financial times, we just keep more of a lookout and talk to our equipment vendors and make sure that we can keep things going. Any others? Yes, absolutely. Yes. Look at what Annie wrote. Feel free to read that as well. It's great.
Not as much, embedded live cool video, but
I love live video. Anything else? Well, be mindful of people's time. That's it.
And just thank you so much, Emery. That was very informational, very cool. Thank you for sharing what you're doing, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Deirdre.
And sorry about my technical difficulties. It was just not letting me launch Zoom. So I was like, Justin, get us kicked off. I'll get there as soon as I can. So
no worries. I told you it was causing problems for me as well. It was fine. We figured it out.
But no, I thought that was awesome though. Thank you again. Very interesting. I only missed maybe the first 10 minutes. So it was really, really good. Thank you.
Great. I did get a couple of questions off the chat if this recording will be available anywhere.
So actually I'll edit this. I think Justin's got the recording. So yeah, we will send that out. And I guess would you mind sending me the slides you presented, because we can post that with the recording?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, happy to.
Awesome. Thank you. So yeah, we'll just kind of edit out any of the kind of
difficulties
filtering
figuring
in,
out.
filtering out sort of things, and we'll get that posted. And actually also, there might be a little bit of a delay because our site is on the Hewitt flagship site, so it's public facing. So we do work with a vendor partner to have closed captioning, like ADA closed captioning added to the video transcript. So we just have to do that and then we can post.
No problem. Sounds good.
All right. Take care. Have a great rest of your
Thank you.
afternoon.